G'day guys, this is Luke Keisha here with Keisha Realty KC, and today I'm very honoured to have our guest Paul Worstel. Paul is a good friend of mine. We met while he was coaching William Jewell many years ago, and he just has a tremendous story that I think will be beneficial for the viewers out there regarding health, family, and a lot of other things. So Paul, thank you for coming in today. I'm
Absolutely.
Extremely honored to have you.
It's great to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you. So, like I mentioned, we met many years ago while you were coaching Jewell. For the viewers here who may not know about you too much, what are you doing these days? Family? Tell just a little bit about yourself.
So, grew up in the small town of Cameron, Missouri, about 30 minutes north of here. Actually went to William Jewell on a tennis scholarship, played there for my college years. After I graduated from Jewell, I got a job working in the radio industry, and married my wife while we were the summer of our junior year at Jewell. We got married, and then we lived here in Liberty, pretty much in the Liberty area ever since. And now I have three boys. Brady's 25, Landon's 22. Landon just got married. And then Carter's 17. He'll be a junior in high school. And now, of all craziness, now I work in the insurance industry. I don't know how you go from coaching to insurance,
Well, it's working with people, right?
Exactly right.
If that's your gift, then you stick with that. Because I know that you can help people, whether it's 100%. Tennis or helping them get insurance.
Yep, absolutely.
So
that's right.
Well, awesome. So Paul had recently released a book called Leukemia Lost. So Paul was, and I'll let you tell the story, but Paul was diagnosed with leukemia, cancer, in 2013, and just it was very aggressive, and he fought through it, and here he is today. So, in the book, Paul, you mentioned that your father, biological father, he walked out when you were 4. And having a 4-year-old boy, it blows my mind that somebody can do that, but it does happen, unfortunately, more than we hope. So at that age, you're extremely vulnerable. You're willing to love without. You don't think of the risk, like, hey, I'm going to love this person, but they may do this. You don't think of it at that age. And unfortunately, he exploited that vulnerability and walked out on you and your family at 4. How did that affect your childhood? And how does that still affect you today? Because I know it's nothing that goes away. That's a piece of you that is just not there.
Yeah. It was tough growing up. The thing that I always appreciated though is, so I grew up with my mom and my grandma, and the biggest thing that they introduced me to was church. And the thing that I learned about in church is, when I accepted Christ, was that God was my father. And that was always a piece for me to have. And so, but I'm human, and there were a lot of days I would struggle, and there were a lot of like Father's Day was always hard for me growing up as a kid. But thankfully, there were a lot of men in our church that took on a father role for me. There were 2 guys in the church that I remember would rotate and take me to the father-son breakfast every Father's Day. Having those kind of role models really helped growing up. But I mentioned in the book, there was one specific Father's Day that I really struggled. And I remember going home after church and just being in my room, and I prayed really hard that day that, Lord, one day help me to become a father to a boy. I want to have a son that I can teach that son how the things that I never got to have as a father growing up. And, God fulfilled that, and he did it 3 times, triply blessed me, I'd always say. And so that has been probably the biggest void that's been filled in my life, is having those 3 boys and being a father to them.
Yeah, That's amazing. 3 times, 3 boys.
Absolutely.
That's
Sometimes you gotta be careful what you pray for.
Yep. Oh my gosh, yeah, I could imagine. We've got 2 who are quite far apart in their age. So 3, all pretty tight. That's
why I call my wife Saint Christy, because I think there's going to be a special place in heaven for her one day.
Oh, that's a lot. That's a lot. So, what advice would you give to a teenager out there who may have unfortunately been put in this position where the father has walked out and they've now lost trust? What would you reckon? What do you advise?
The biggest thing I would advise is try to get connected in the church and I think the other thing too is I had some really good friends growing up too. And so those friends as fathers knew my situation, and they would step in and help a lot as well. And so friends are a huge importance. I think church is the biggest importance. Getting to know God as your father, that was probably the biggest, the biggest void for me, because I always felt a peace when I would pray, and I always felt that God had something bigger for me later on in life. And so that would be my 2 things: is to find a good church and get connected there, and then really connect with friends, and they'll help you and stick by you. So,
oh, that's awesome. Yeah, those 2 things. They will guide you for whatever situations you go through.
Absolutely.
And then talking about situations, May 13th, 2013. That was obviously a day that still rings it's a tough day. So you were diagnosed with leukemia. Can you tell me just a little bit about that? You mentioned in the book that there were some signs, sore throat, just energy levels well below what you used to, and how you dealt with that diagnosis.
It was interesting because I started a hobby of running a long time before that, and I could typically run about an 8:30 mile, and over the span of, and what was so crazy is I just learned this like about a month or 2 ago, is I had blood work done in December of 2012.
Okay.
Completely normal.
Wow.
Okay? And so from December to March, something happened between that period. And so my mile times just started decreasing. And then I thought it was my shoes. So I bought a brand new pair of shoes, kept decreasing. And finally it got down to my mile time was like 12:45. And there was nothing I could do. I couldn't
just out of breath.
Yeah. And then there was a week in, I think, early May, I got this horrible sore throat, and I felt like I was swallowing glass, and I honestly had to have been strep throat.
Right.
So I go to the doctor, and they look at me, and they tell me, your throat's not even red. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. I can't hardly even swallow. So they gave me some like antibiotic mouthwash, and I tried that. And then Mother's Day of 2013, of all days, we're at church, and several people came up to me and told me I didn't look good.
And you weren't feeling yellow, were you feeling?
And I was not feeling well. And in fact, the day before, I went out and mowed my lawn. I tried to mow my lawn. I mowed one strip and felt like I'd ran the New York Marathon. I had to stop, and my boys had to finish mowing that day. I couldn't. I literally mowed one strip of my yard, and I felt like I was going to pass out. And so went to the emergency room on Mother's Day of all days. And they did blood work, and they were kind of shocked at the blood work. So they called my doctor, because the ER doctor at the time wanted to give me a blood transfusion there in the ER, but my doctor told him not to, and that he wanted to see me first thing Monday morning. Went to him first thing that Monday morning, did blood work again. He told me to go home. He would call me with the results. He literally called me, and I literally walked in my door, and 5 minutes later he said, you need to pack a bag and get to the hospital.
Wow.
And he, at that point, you don't know what's going on. I don't remember
You don't want to hear that.
Exactly.
Pack your bags and go to the hospital. No.
So I'm going up to my room, and I still, this is probably the most vivid thing that's ever happened to me in my life, is I opened up my drawers of my dresser and I'm getting packed, and I stopped for a second. I just looked up to God like this, and I said, what's going on? Yeah. And just almost like clear as day, like you and I are talking together right here, I heard him say, hey, I've got this. Uh-huh. Wow. And, looking back, I'm so thankful he didn't tell me what he had. Right. Because had he told me, I don't know that I would have signed up for this, kind of a thing. Right. And so I just that was my mantra the whole time, is that, okay, you're going to take care of it. So I'm just going to leave it in your hands. Yeah. And so went to pack the bag, got to the hospital. They immediately did a blood transfusion on me right when I got in the hospital. And what was crazy is I immediately felt great after the blood transfusion. It felt like I was back to normal. Removing that blood. And then I still remember texting my wife at the hospital that day to say, hey, when's our trip to Disney World? Uh-huh. And she goes, oh, it's in 2 weeks. And I can't wait to go. And because I felt fine. I literally thought they were going to check me out the next day and I would be home. Yeah. And then they came in and said, we're going to do a test to check on leukemia. And I thought, that word is interesting. But I felt so good after that blood transfusion that there's no way. Yeah. And so the following morning, they did a bone marrow biopsy, and then literally within an hour, I had an oncologist in my room telling me that I had leukemia, and it floored me at first. Yeah. So wow. Yeah. And they gave you was it a 55%? There was and then what was interesting is they gave me a 55% chance for survival, but then a less than 20% chance if I did not find a donor. And I have a half brother and a half sister. They were immediately ruled out because no bloodline. Yeah. So they have to find a perfect 10 out of 10 match. They ended up finding 3. Which was, from what I was told, the equivalent of winning like the Mega Millions, because that's very rare. Yeah. And so, again, those little kinds of things that just kept happening over and over again prove that God had it. Yeah, he had it. Yeah. So, yeah. Wow. And then how long did it take to get that donor? It took a while. They don't start that process until you reach remission. Okay. So I was diagnosed in May. Right after I was told I had leukemia, I started chemo the very next day. And so I had to go through from May till middle part of July. Uh-huh. I would spend a week in the hospital, then come home. Chemo. A week in the hospital, then come home. Yeah, doing a really intensive chemo regimens. And then middle part of July, they declared me in remission. Okay. And then they started the donor process then to find a donor. And ended up, once they found the 3, then they narrowed it down because they wanted to find certain characteristics of that donor that they wanted, and ended up finding one, a young man from Germany that ended up agreeing. Because that's the other part, is when they find him, then they've got to contact them. Right. They may sign up and they'll be like, oh, wait, I wasn't actually expecting to have to do this and go through this painful process. Yeah. Because honestly, to be quite honest, it's more painful for them than it would for me to get to receive them. So, yeah. And that donor, after 2, you can't contact them for 2 years. Correct. Yeah. Which you wrote in the book. Have you been able to reach out to that person and we saving your life? Yeah, really? we got to Skype with him and his parents. I believe it was in May of 2016. Okay. And his English was a little broken, but his parents spoke very good English. Okay. So they were there to help translate. And, apparently to them, it was like no big deal. It's for them to be a part of the bone marrow registry. It's almost like us voting and registering to vote. It's like a normal thing for them to do that overseas. Yeah. And so, it was me and my wife and my 3 boys were on that call. And it was very emotional because guy saved my life, basically. And
Yeah.
What's great is I email him every January 17th because that's the day of the transplant.
Okay.
It's my rebirth day, basically. So I get 2 birthdays in a year. And so I email him every January, and we communicate pretty much through email back and forth. And so,
wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible that somebody in Germany were the ones. You think, like you said, family or which is what they probably go for first, but then just whoever they can get.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's amazing. And so now your health, have you had to modify anything? Do you have to do checkups? Like what does the situation look for you now?
So I have a local oncologist here in Liberty that I meet with once a year. And then I also have my bone marrow doctor in Omaha, Nebraska, because that's where my wife had to relocate for 4 months to undergo the stem cell transplant. I see him once a year as well. The only residual effect is a lot of the chemo and some of the radiation that I had to undergo. It fried my thyroid. So the only medicine I'm on right now is a thyroid medicine.
Okay.
Other than that, they always told me that if I were able to get past 5 years with no problems, they would declare me free. And that the chance of it ever coming back was pretty much slim and none. And so I'm coming up. Thankfully, God's blessed me to another, almost 9 years since the transplant. So It's been incredible to see how he worked and how he healed me through that. I mentioned in the book, there were 4 of us that underwent transplants at the same time. Okay. 2 of them have already passed away, which is sad, and we were so close to them, and it was, kind of sad, but it's given me even more inspiration to write this book, to give people hope, and to know that God's got you, and He'll be there for you.
Just trust,
absolutely,
and then you work hard on your side.
Absolutely, yeah. I still watch. I do my best to watch what I eat. I still exercise. I still try to keep in good shape, and
Wow, it's incredible. After reading the book, it is really, significantly changed the way, just with family, you take it for granted, but as you saw, it can be gone.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I will say that probably since this diagnosis that my perspective has changed a lot. I don't sweat small stuff anymore.
Right. Yeah.
I don't, the things that bother most people don't even register for me.
Right.
It does. It changes your perspective quite a bit, for sure. Yeah.
I was going to ask how it changed your outlook and how you handle situations, because unfortunately you sometimes need to go through trials like that in order to see things the way you should see them,
for sure,
and not get caught up in the daily stuff. So
it was. I tell people all the time, if I didn't have to go through the pain, I would go back again, because of the closeness that I felt with God during that time was incredible. Yeah, and that is something I'll always remember through that journey of the almost a year and a half, was the closeness that I felt with God every day.
Right. Just total reliance.
It was
on Him. So.
Absolutely.
Wow, it's amazing. So the book is called Leukemia Lost. I'm going to read off the last line here. It's overcoming fear and seeking refuge in God's presence. So below this YouTube video, there is going to be a link to the book. So I personally think you should definitely get your hands on this. It's a good one-time read, but also something to go back on when you feel that you're kind of going off the wrong path, and helps you focus on what's really important in this short life we have. So, Paul, I appreciate you coming in.
Absolutely, it was great.
It's always a pleasure.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
Thanks for writing that book, and I know it's going to impact a lot of people.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye.